You're listening to the Today's Conveyancer podcast, the leading source of information for residential property lawyers in England and Wales. Don't forget to subscribe and sign up to our free newsletter at todaysconveyancer.co.uk. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter.
Hello, welcome along to the latest Today's Conveyancer podcast. Today I'm talking with Stephen Hill. Stephen is the Managing Director at Denovo BI, a case management system that has historically been quite prevalent in Scotland and has an increasing presence in England and Wales. And part of the discussion today is going to be that interesting dynamic between those two localities as well, Stephen, because I suspect they present some logistical challenges for you as an organisation. Thank you very much indeed for joining the podcast.
Thanks very much, David. Happy to be here.
So we're going to talk about case management. We're going to talk about Scotland and England and Wales and some of the challenges there. And I'd really like to talk about how case management is changing, what's on the horizon, and how we can improve the lives of conveyancers. That's a long-standing mantra, I think, of a lot of technology that's coming into the conveyancing space. In the first instance, I'd like you to tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you've been with the business for quite some time, and there's a very recent announcement about your role as well, which I'd like you to share with us, please, Stephen.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been with Denovo for the best part of 18 years, primarily from operations and accounts perspective. When I first joined, June 2019, appointed operations director, so taking more of a leading role in the organisation and how we move forward into that journey. Obviously, right before COVID, so an interesting period in that time frame as well. So we've actually grown quite considerably throughout 2019, 2021. Then our managing director, George Blair, was looking to step aside into a more overseeing role in the organisation. So it made sense from a continuity point of view for clients and for employees that I took on the role of managing director to take the company forward and in the direction we were already going. So it's a seamless transition, but one I'm very much looking forward to some new challenges and how we navigate the legal landscape as it shifts into the future.
What's the headcount at Denovo BI?
So we've got 30 members on the team, a mix and range of how that's made up in terms of support, implementation through to your sales and marketing and operations. So a nice mix, a nice manageable number and one we've grown. We were at 24 this time last year, so right. The jump to 30, you can see we're certainly fast paced and moving.
And I said in the introduction that you're based in Scotland, you've got a growing presence in England and Wales, and that has a knock-on impact on, as I say, some of the logistics behind the technology as well, because although conveyancing isn't wholly dissimilar, there are obviously significant differences between the processes in Scotland and England and Wales. How do you manage that in your case management system?
Okay, so I'll bore you a little bit with some background first, and then we'll move into the more interesting part of the question. We actually designed Denovo as an account system around about the early 2000s, and from the ground up, we made it English and Scottish, or England and Wales and Scottish compatible.
Right.
So the accounts back-end system has always been geared towards that. So in terms of the very boring things, that processes, billing, document management, anything accounts based, you've always had that option with Denovo. So we've always had that flexibility for Scotland and England and Wales. Moving forward into case management systems, the last part of the year, it's ramped up significantly in terms of what people are wanting to do, how the workflows and the matter management works, how a conveyancing transaction processes is completely different in Scotland compared with England and Wales. So we do a lot of things early in the case, right up to like concluding your missives in Scotland, whereas England and Wales is very last minute. It's very much, it happens a lot at the end. So we've even been building an integration with a provider that does new build conveyancing. So for builders, we're looking to make it a bit better in terms of how the law firm updates the builder. And when we looked at the Scottish flow and the English flow, they were vastly different. They actually didn't really know the Scottish flow as well as they knew the England and Wales flow, which is fair enough because that's their background and that's a huge chunk of the market. So yeah, it's been quite interesting trying to get things right at both ends. And as we move more into England, we're just going to learn more about those processes and how we evolve.
It's a really interesting point that you make about the differences in terms of almost the way that conveyancing is delivered, sort of quite up front in Scotland and quite late on in England and Wales. And I think there's a lot of practitioners that will empathise with that sentiment. One of my questions I wanted to ask you, and it's great to have somebody with such longevity on the discussion as well, is how case management has changed during your time with the business. I know you said it was an account system to start with, and then you've moved into case management. But how did that develop? How did that idea develop? And then how has the whole sort of matter management landscape changed over the course of the last 15 years?
The legal landscape's shifting dramatically, even from the basics, like cloud-based systems weren't a thing maybe 10 years ago. So we went down the cloud route 2011, 2012 roughly, because we knew that was coming. We knew that was going to be part of the solution. A lot of law firms are out there to see what solutions are out there in terms of reducing overheads. How do we have an unmatched level of service to our clients? How do we digitize the process? So incrementally, I mean, there's always been document management systems, email management systems, and now what's happening is, I suppose because of a bit of the remote hybrid working, it's even more important that case management system is the single source of truth. So you might need 4 or 5 different technology solutions, but we're looking for them all to talk to each other. I know we'll get onto things like integrations, but that's fundamental in how a case management system flows. One of the things we really took on board 3-4 years ago was the ability to have a leads management system. We identified a bit of a gap in the market in that you don't want an inquiry coming in and automatically creating a client matter. You want to be able to nurture that inquiry, see if it's a viable inquiry, and then take it forward. So the leads management part of the system is a fundamental change in how a law firm operated, how they dealt with those inquiries, how they communicated with those inquiries. And what it seemed to do was offer, like what I talked about, an unmatched level of service to the client. The client was getting interacted with much better right at the start of being introduced as a client, and therefore I think they felt that this was a law firm to go through because it's a very competitive market. So if you're not seen as being the one that's going to offer the best level of communication right at the start, they're just going to go somewhere else.
You touched on remote working and the way that that's changed the legal landscape. Have you seen, and anecdotally, this is something that I get told, but have you seen an increase in the usage of case management, particularly to manage staff, manage supervision from a compliance point of view, having everything in one place that's easy to review feels quite important in this new hybrid working landscape?
Absolutely. The key driver in all law firms is they're looking to remove manual labour. The first step towards modernising the business is how do they get everyone to buy into it? How does everyone adopt the technology? And adoption is a massive part of it. It'll start with adoption, and then we'll look at automation in the future. But adoption is key. If you don't get everyone buying into the technology that you've purchased, then the information's somewhere else. It's stored in a folder. It's completely alien to the whole system. So the very fundamental part of that is adoption and how everyone uses the system. How do they get documents out of the system? How do they get documents in? Is all a massive part of how we can drive that change forward, because the tools are there. We're providing the tools, the case management, the billing, the document management. We need it to be easy for the consumer to use, but also have a massive benefit to how the client feels involved in the transaction as well. Because that's one of the biggest complaints, is probably that we don't feel communicated with. We don't feel that we're getting updates on the case. if everything's happening at the end, what's happening in the weeks in between? They want to be involved, they want to be communicated with at that point.
One of my favourite phrases at the moment is no update is an update. The idea that just even if nothing's going on, it's still important to have communicated that to the client. So you've got a bit of experience, I suspect, with converting skeptics, Stephen. What are your thoughts? How do we get conveyancers to adopt more technology, adopt case management and wider tech systems?
It's interesting because I think in an effort to solve every part of what's seen as the legal workflow problem, you think, I'll just buy a solution for that. I'll just get a video conference platform, I'll get an online billing platform, I'll get a client intake platform. And then you look at it and you go, oh, we've got too many different areas for updating. So whilst you can cover all the bases, and that's a really positive thing, the problem is if they don't then talk to each other, then your staff spend more time updating the systems, and it doesn't become easier. It's what I call a copy-paste nightmare.
That's certainly a complaint that I know a lot of conveyancers have got. We log into this portal for our panel, we log into this portal for our case and matter management system, we log into this portal for our leads management, for the sake of argument. Certainly, integration and interoperability is a big theme at the moment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And what then happens is you get those gaps, and then you don't tell the staff how to use each part of it properly. So the education piece falls off a cliff as well, because you just think, I'll just buy a solution and that'll work. People will know how to use it, it'll get used. But it doesn't really work like that. It's the old analogy, if you build it, they will come. But if they don't come and they don't show up, then the technology is only as good as its users. The law firm needs to coach everyone internally. And that's when I see the biggest successes in tech firm adoption. The ones that are using 95% of the case management system are the ones that have been internally educated on how to use that. And that makes a massive difference in the processes, the efficiencies, and the time that's wasted on the administrative tasks that nobody wants to do. Nobody wants to do the manual processes. It's the automation argument as well. We can save that time, then reduce the manual processes, then there's less delays. They enjoy using the system. We want people to enjoy using the system. We don't want it to feel like a burden. And if you enjoy using it and it doesn't feel repetitive, there's much more chance you're going to get good results out of it.
Another trend I've seen is this move toward central hubs, case management systems being one example, seeking best of breed third-party solutions. So instead of building your own solutions, you've and it's the role you have tended to go out and find best of breed third parties to integrate with. Is that a trend that you identify in your business, Stephen?
Yeah, absolutely. Last 12 to 18 months, that's been huge. The interoperability has been key in that. So we're not going to go out and build an AML solution, an ID solution, or get even remotely involved in searches, because searches in England is an absolute nightmare. We've identified that. So what we've done in the last 12 to 18 months is we've worked with basically the three main providers in Scotland, and we've built the best solution we can with their technology. And it's been very different in how each of them have worked. They all focus on like the best industry standards. What we're looking for is standardized data formats. So any provider we work with, we're hoping they're going to work with those industry standard formats, whether that be JSON, XML. They're all building really robust APIs and documenting them, so it becomes so much easier to work with them, and that's been a massive future. We've focused a huge amount of part of this year on conveyancing alone. Don't tell the other work types, but that's been probably our biggest focus this year. We want people to be involved, be inside the case management system as much as possible. The data already exists. I don't want you inputting it again, logging into a portal, typing all that information up again, and sending it off. And then when the results come back, you're downloading those reports, searches, uploading them back into the case management system. What we've said fundamentally with all the ones we work with, it has to be end to end. You have to make the request from the case management system and just wait for those results to come back in. And we've had really good feedback on that as a process, and they feel as if it's a bit more of a multi-connected system inside the case management system, rather than it being that kind of disparaging, I've got this to do, I've got that to do, so I've got this website to log into. And that'll only evolve as things like land registry APIs become like industry standard as well. So even at the end of the transaction, when everything's settled and concluded, you'll then be able to just say, right, that documentation is now ready to be uploaded, and off it goes. That's the dream.
Well, there's some move towards the dream becoming a bit of a reality, because there's things like the Home Buying and Selling Group in England and Wales. There's a new digital property market steering group that's been launched. Have you seen, as a tech and a case management provider, have you seen a greater willingness from the industry to better integrate, to better collaborate?
I think in reality, it feels like a while ago now, but COVID forced a lot of that as well to make it a lot more digital. We had a point in Scotland right at the start where we've got a government organisation, Registers of Scotland, and they weren't online. They couldn't accept online applications. It was paper only. And they had to actually close for a period of time because of COVID. So there was no registrations being done for like a reasonable period of time. So that was absolutely chaotic, like unheard of, something that should never happen. So they've been forced to digitise the processes. To be fair, from what I've seen in the latest API documentation, what they've already got is good. What they've got coming down the road is even better. So there's a huge willingness for it to happen, and it's going to happen. It's not an if, it's a when. It's a long time coming, but it's something that's accelerated massively in the last few years. And some of that is because of client demand as well. It's not just the firms demand. Clients want better engagement with their law firms, like we've said. They want an update. They want to know where exactly are we at in this transaction? What's happening now? What's going to happen? And then when are we getting to the end? So the more you can communicate that with them as well, and like connect the dots, then the better experience it is for them as well.
And we talked about third-party providers, ID, AML searches, that kind of business. What about interoperability with other case management systems? That's always been difficult, in my opinion. Again, have you seen some, greater willingness around that to work better with other systems, which ultimately enables conveyancers to work better with the other side?
Yeah, I think due to competition, it's been a bit more difficult to like, it's competing solutions, isn't it, at the end of the day? So I think we're quite good because we've got such a good accounts system that a case management system might want to work with us because we can be sharing data sources and payloads of data and things like that. So fee requests into the account system, maybe an update of that position back to the case management system. Do you know what I mean? They can work hand in hand and give you a better experience. I think client portals will probably play a larger part of it moving forward as well, because you'll be able to, regardless of systems, share information out and into a more connected platform potentially. So there's a little bit of it coming, but there's been a lot of hoovering up of providers as well in England and Wales, even in Scotland as well. So it'll be interesting to see what the landscape looks like in a few years in terms of how many providers are going to be left, because there was an upsurge in different speciality areas in the last few years, but as some of those providers get hoovered up by larger organisations, it's going to be an interesting landscape to navigate in the next few years in terms of how that moves forward. So as a byproduct of that, you might have more connected systems because they're owned by the one umbrella group potentially. It remains to be seen.
Well, here's a loaded question. and it's probably not in your interest to answer it in a particular way, Stephen, but that specialisation piece that you've alluded to is another trend, isn't it? There are sort of specialist providers within conveyancing, within wills and probate, within family. I know you kind of have a sort of a full suite solution. Understandably, you're going to say that's the direction of travel, but is there space for both? Is there space for both the specialist and the full service solution?
Yeah, I'm going to say yes, actually. Going to contradict slightly because, like the AML and the ID and the searches, that's not our bag. That's not our speciality area. So if there's a better solution there that we can bolt on to our case management solution, then 100% we're going to integrate with it. There's some probate ones out there already. There's some will writing software. Now, we're not going to go and develop and design will writing software. So if you can integrate and like step out of the case management system for a little bit to do a very specialist document drafting solution, then why not? It's something they're an expert in. So it's just making sure that it doesn't feel cumbersome that, oh, I need to go here to do that. If you know that's still the quickest way of doing it and it's better than what we've got natively, then I'm all for it, 100%.
Let me ask you about customization and drilling into that point a little bit further, because there isn't a one size fits all for case management. Every firm operates slightly differently. How do you ensure that your solution is the right solution for the firm?
I listen. Listening plays a huge part. Understanding the challenges that the firms are facing and trying to design solutions around those make a big difference. Because as a provider, we can only go so far in developing tools and technology for the firm to use. And if we don't get feedback, we can't deliver conjoined development of features, for example. So that makes a massive difference into hearing what those challenges are, because we're never going to understand the whole process. We're not doing it day to day. We're sitting in there in our offices trying to develop the best software possible. But if we don't hear from firms what they need it to do, then we can't take it forward. What we've done as well is when we introduced our latest version of the case management software, we focused heavily on obviously the core product, but also a subsystem. So a bit like being able to design a workflow, we can now design add-ins. So as the case progresses, it can, just depending on your specific needs, a single law firm can say, see when we do that, can we do this? See when we do that, can we do that? And we build those in incrementally into the software. So every firm that uses it gets a fully customized solution for them based around what they wanted to achieve with a certain part of the process, rather than it being a one-size-fits-all off-the-shelf product. We didn't want that to be the case, really.
Well, give me some examples. And you say that you've been looking at conveyancing quite heavily over the last sort of year, 18 months or so. What innovations have you introduced into the conveyancing workflow that has been as a result of client feedback?
So a lot of it's focused around milestones. You're always going to have similar touch points. So we've designed parts of the software where you open up the matter, you're clicking on milestones to progress the case, and off the back of that, actions take place. So as an example, we've been working with a new build property provider, and they weren't getting information back from the solicitor. A client would call in, what's happening here? No idea. So what we did is we built, as the lawyer clicks through those milestones, off the back of that, there's like silent communication with the third party builder. So they're getting updates and their CRM's been updated just because the lawyer's completed actions in our case management system. So for me, that's a kind of easy win. It's a clever solution that just works and everyone's happy. Everyone gets the update that they want and they know how that's progressing, but it doesn't increase the manual tasks involved for the lawyer at that end as well. We've been working on other very basic solutions like an auto feeing solution. So ones that as soon as a transaction is completed, a button's clicked, a fee's created, it's sent to the client, reminders are sent. So all of those kind of help with processes involved. Maybe not so much in conveyancing, but those kind of ideas and solutions that we will look to implement.
One of the issues, in inverted commas, I have with milestones, and I've been involved in a business that had milestones in a short workflow, is that the milestones for the lawyer are in some cases different from the milestones that the client needs to know. And that can be quite a challenge, because sometimes, and one of the criticisms of milestones is that by alerting a client to something that's happened, you create
Yeah,
more
you give them a
questions
reason
than
to
you answer.
communicate. Yeah, no, absolutely. What we kind of take in our approach is we have a start and we have an end. We usually have a middle. A middle's a kind of key point. So what we want to do is we make sure that every transaction has the start, middle, and the end. And then maybe every transaction has a very specific SLA, and maybe one takes 28 weeks, and you say, right, at 7 weeks and 14 weeks, we interact with the client. So everyone gets the same experience. So it's difficult, and it's all clients are different as well. It's so difficult to get it right. But I think if you can have like your firm standards and you tell them beforehand, that's key actually as well. Set the expectation before you even kick a ball, and it might be a bit easier. So if you say, I'm going to be in touch with you in 6 weeks, I'm going to be in touch with you in 8 weeks and 10 weeks and 12 weeks, they're expecting that. So if you don't hit the milestone, then you're going to create a problem because you've told them. But I think if you set the expectation beforehand, then you stand a greater chance of success.
And automation plays its part in that, doesn't it? Because it either prompts you in some way, or it does it without you having to worry or think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Colours play a huge part, bizarrely. When you open up our matters, a lot of firms like to see things in colour. So if they're on track, it's green. If they're getting close to it, it's amber. If they're overdue, it's red. It's silly, but it makes a massive difference in terms of where you think you're at for each of your transactions. And a big red indicator really makes you think and make a decision on something. Whereas if it's green, you're like, okay, it's green, we're fine, we're on track. But that does play a part as well. It does help.
So you've taken on the role as MD. You're directing the travel of Denovo BI. What's on your agenda? What's on Denovo BI's agenda? And more widely, what does the future of case management look like, do you think, Stephen? Big question.
It's a huge question. I think we're getting adoption of case management systems right, but I still think there's work to be done in automation and consolidation of systems. There's still definite scope to have more interoperability and more connected systems. But I think I'm going to say this: when it comes to technology, less is more. The more you can work in that one connected system, I think that would be the most powerful tool. So if Denovo can get it right and get as much into our system that helps the firm day to day, then I think that would result in a stronger client relationship, more productive staff, increased profitability, less human error. All of that kind of stuff will come into it. But whether there is that silver bullet, I don't quite know yet, because there's so many different processes still to come. But automation is going to play a huge part in how those systems work moving forward. I think embracing the automation means that you make the technology work the way you want it to work, not the other way around. I think if we can take a matter-centric approach, as I said, connecting the dots of every piece of the process, then the staff can have that one central location where they can see the details of the matter, they can see what's on the to-do list, it can automate the documentation and the communication, and then eventually the billing, and then that's the utopia. I think at the moment, certainly there's more things to come, which I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in at all, but there is more things to come, and it's going to be an interesting future.
Not least artificial intelligence. And I can't seem to have a conversation with anybody at the moment without mentioning AI. Do you see that's got a role in your business and more widely in case management?
Yeah, that's what I was alluding to, and I wasn't going to mention. I'm a little bit skeptical at the moment in terms of how it's going to play out. To be honest, I can totally see the benefit. And I think for things like marketing and being able to produce articles and things like that, I think AI will play a huge part of it. We're very much at it remains to be seen how that plays out from our perspective. As I said, I'm going to just admit the truth here and say I am skeptical about where I see it going. I think I need to see proven solutions before taking too big of a jump into it. You might ask me in 6 months' time and I'll have a completely different answer, but as of this moment in time, I think there's still some work to be done. It still needs beta tested.
Who leads that then? Is it case management? Is it independent companies? I know government are looking into it as well. Who, in your view, leads that first step, if you like?
We're already using AI. So inside your Microsoft solutions, you'll see AI. So if you're producing a document, it will tell you how grammatically correct the document is and offer suggestions. So there's AI, like very small bits of AI in there. It'll be interesting to see how Copilot plays out in terms of that. So having a piece of software take meeting notes and distributing them, that'll be interesting to see as well. So once you start to see proven solutions, you can actually start to get your head around how you feel that would work in a case management system as well.
AI feels quite ethereal still, I think it's fair to say, and there's very much that art of the possible that we're still exploring, but it will have a role to play, I'm sure. As you say, it's just not quite clear what that looks like just yet. We've come to the end of the time that we've got together, Stephen, and it's been really interesting to chat with you, to chat about your journey coming from Scotland into England and Wales as well, and I really appreciate your insights. So thank you very much indeed for joining the podcast.
No problem at all, David. Really appreciate the time. Thanks for the invite.
The Today's Conveyancer podcast is available on your preferred podcast provider. It's also available on todaysconveyancer.co.uk. Thank you to Stephen. Thank you as ever for listening, and we shall see you again soon.
You're listening to the Today's Conveyancer podcast, the leading source of information for residential property lawyers in England and Wales. Don't forget to subscribe and sign up to our free newsletter at todaysconveyancer.co.uk. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter.